Very good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Chair, Dr. Sanjay Rana. It is wonderful to be here, and I echo your sentiments that it's a very interesting and emerging field, and very interesting innovations that are happening in the water space. But unfortunately, because of one or other reasons that we were discussing, we don't have a lot of participation. But that doesn't kind of hold us back from discussing the issue. Can we have the presentation? Is it possible? Okay, great.
Sorry, we can't have the presentation.
So where it will be played?
Hello, let it be there. Then we should not start the session unless we are ready with the presentations, no? Because everyone has to make a presentation.
Or since I have started, so shall I go?
We
ahead?
can continue and we can do the presentations later.
fine.
Yeah.
And I'm keeping 17 minutes for every speaker.
Okay.
I'll just give you a tap after 15 minutes.
Let me try to speak for 17 minutes without presentation. Okay. So see, one of the issues I think that was also highlighted by Dr. Sanjay Rana was that the issue is not about whether we have ample or sufficient water or not. The issue is about how we are managing it. And given the climate change driven changes that are happening, so this is becoming more of an issue. So as you are aware, in India we already have a lot of variability in the way rainfall happens here. For example, in western Rajasthan, from where the chair also comes, it might be only about 100 millimeters of rainfall in a year. But as you move towards eastern, on the northeastern side of India, the rainfall is about 10,000 millimeters. So there is this huge variation that we encounter in our country. Now add to it the complications due to climate change. The patterns are changing. We might be receiving the same rainfall, but in a less number of days. So what we see in Delhi, there were only 3 major rainy days, and each of them has clocked close to 200 millimeter of rainfall. And the average rainfall in Delhi is about 700 millimeters. So in 3 days, we ended up getting close to 500 to 550 millimeter of rainfall. So this is how the pattern is changing, and it is driven largely by the climatic changes. So of course, we need to be ready for such kind of changes, and how it impacts water resource availability. See, our systems are designed considering a particular average rainfalls. So whether they are reservoirs, whether they are storages, there is always this dependability factor which is taken into consideration, and most of the time it is 75% dependability that is considered while designing such systems. Now, if the entire amount of rainfall is received in very less number of days, there is a limitation to which these reservoirs can also hold water. And given the nature of monsoon in India, most of the country receives it during the southwest monsoon, which is now. And only certain parts of India, they also get a second monsoon, which is a northeast monsoon. So what it does is that we have storages, but if everything is falling in a short duration, reservoirs also have a limited capacity, and then we have to release a lot of this water. So this is a problem that we are facing with. Now there are several things which are done at the country scale, where we are trying to see where is the need to augment water resources, where there is a need to go for a demand management, where there is a need to look for, I usually say non-conventional sources of water like desalination you mentioned, which is quite in use in Central Asia. Then one another non-conventional source can be treated wastewater. Now, for a long we have not paid attention to making reuse of such water, but as we move further, and given how the cities are struggling to meet their water demand, you name any city, whether it's Delhi, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Pune, all the cities now are dependent on far off water resources to meet their demand. Now Delhi is getting water from Ganga, we are getting water from Yamuna, Now we are waiting for one another dam to be ready, which has not even started construction. So this is how we are spread out in terms of from where we are getting the water. So these non-conventional water sources are getting very important. I mean, if we have to really want to manage the demand as well as reduce the pressure on freshwater resources, and also in terms of their quality. I mean, we also need to think about the quality. Now, how we can capture, what we are doing, what India is doing, how we can know where we are progressing, what actually we are trying to achieve. And this is where I think the sustainable development goals, they provide a very nice picture that, we can actually measure in terms of these larger goals that we have kept. Can we run the presentation if it is already loaded?
Second presentation run kar dijiye, please.
Slideshow mode, please. बॉटम आप में देखिए वो कप है ना, उस पर क्लिक कर दीजिए राइट में. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I was talking about, there are these sustainable development goals, and specifically sustainable development goal 6, which is on clean water and sanitation. So 6.1 is about universalization of water supply services, 6.2 is universalization of sanitation, 6.3 relates to water quality and wastewater treatment and reuse, 6.4 is on improving water use efficiency, 6.5 is on integrated water resources management, and 6.6 relates to our water related ecosystems. And we will be just going through, on all these how India is faring. So if we look at 6.1 and 6.2, of course we are having, just keep it here. When I say next, then you move it. So if we look at 6.1, which is about universalization of water supply services, so we see that India is already having a Jal Jeevan mission, which is running since 2019. And now almost 77% of rural household, they have tap connection within the premises. But this goal doesn't stop here. I mean, if you have a tap in your home, it doesn't mean that you also have water supply. So what it says is that the first is you have a tap within the home. The next is that it should have water when you need. And the third is it should be free from any kind of a bacteriological or a chemical contamination. So India, we are progressing well. I mean, when this scheme started, only 17% of rural households, they had tap connection within the premises. And now 77% of them have it. So we are progressing in a right direction. It's just that we now have to think about the source sustainability and how we ensure that the water reaches to the household. The 6.2 on safe sanitation, we declared open defecation free country, I would say, I think in 2019. Then we started, even going beyond looking at the solid waste management aspects, the liquid waste management aspects in the villages. And that particular approach is called as ODF plus, which means open defecation free plus. So even considering the solid waste management and the liquid waste management aspects, around 86% of the villages in India, they have the ODF plus status as well. So, but again, the challenge is to, of course, have 100% of it. And the next is to sustain, is to maintain it. So this is where, we have to be careful about. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of water quality improvement, this particular, target 6.3, it says that at least we should have 50% of the wastewater treatment infrastructure. And then the other thing is that we should encourage reuse of water. What we see is at the pan-India level, if we look at the latest inventory, which was there, which took 2021 data, we see that about 72,000 million liters per day of wastewater was generated from the urban centers in India alone. This is not even talking about the rural areas. From urban centers, some 72,000 million liters per day of water was generated. We already created capacity to treat 44% of it. Actual treatment is 28%. And the reason can be several. You know, sometimes the conveyance systems are not attached to the sewage treatment plants. The sewage treatment plant might not have reliable electricity or energy source. The human resources might not be there, or the sewage treatment plant might malfunction because of the lack of operation and maintenance issue. So only 28% was actually operational. So in terms of capacity, yes, we can say that we are progressing well, because these sustainable development goals have to be met by 2030 and we are still in 2024. But then in terms of operational aspects, we have to improve a lot. And the recent assessment, which was undertaken in 2022, it, you know, kind of highlighted that we have about 311 polluted stretches in 279 rivers across 30 states and union territories. And most of these, rivers or water bodies are getting polluted from the wastewater which is actually flowing from the urban areas. Take example of River Yamuna. Almost 80% of the pollution that the river carries is actually contributed by cities and like Delhi. So this is what, you know, we are actually, that is why we have to take a lot of care when we talk about wastewater from the urban areas. Next slide, please. Now, water use efficiency improvement is very important, and why we say so. So at the pan-India level, the water availability is same, right? But then we have population which is increasing. As population increase, the demand for food increases, the demand for products increases, which means that more production is required, which means more area needs to be irrigated. When the population grows, the demand for other goods also increases, which means that we need to depend on more industrial production. All these things require water, whereas it's in a limited quantity which is available. And when we apply the population as a denominator factor here, what we see is that hardly, you know, especially this is a river basin map of India, the basins or the areas which you see in blue are the only ones which are not having any kind of a water stress. Other areas, I mean, as we, you know, look at the shades of red, the darker red are the areas where you have absolute water scarcity, right? And by this metrics, even Ganga is having a, you know, it's in the water scarce zone already. So this is how the condition is there in India, and that is why we keep on saying that we have to reduce wastage, we have to optimize the way water is used, and that is what water use efficiency is. That the production, or let's say any output per unit of water, or the water utilized for any per unit of production has to be optimized, and that is what water use efficiency is all about. If you look at National Water Mission guidelines, they state that we need to improve the water use efficiency by 20%. Next slide, please. Now, IWRM, it's a practice, or integrated water resource management, it is a practice where we take a holistic approach when we manage our natural resources. And in case of water, it means that it's not only about water, but all the sectors who are dependent on water, be it agriculture, be it domestic sector, be it industries or environment. Now, our country is very unique. So water is both in the center and the state list. When it comes to inter-water basin issues, when it comes to inter-water basin, challenges or disputes, it is the center who can actually take a decision. But water resources which have to be developed within the administrative unit, it is the responsibility of the state. And then these management happen within the administrative boundaries. Those who are from the water space, they know water doesn't follow any administrative boundaries. What it knows are the hydrological boundaries. Unfortunately, we don't have any specific river basin management plan. There was Ganga River Basin Management Plan which was developed, but it was more of a situational analysis, rather than a plan. But now, of course, National Mission for Clean Ganga is there, which is behaving more like a basin management regulator, and who are trying to improve the condition in River Ganga. But similar sort of approaches we need. And one other issue is that we keep on saying that water needs to be reallocated, we need to optimize it, but we don't have numbers with us to do that. For example, I mean, if I ask you, you will say, oh yes, irrigation taking away 80% of the water. The future water demand is going to come from the domestic and the industrial space. Now, how we reallocate this water without harming the food production? For that to do, we need to have some numbers. We need to understand the water accounts. Then only such decision can be taken. And unfortunately, such water accounting is not undertaken regularly in India. And this is also something that we need to focus on. Next slide, please. Dr. Anna, how much time I have? 2 minutes. This relates to 6.6, where we are, it's about water-related ecosystem. One good thing is, if we compare the two time periods, that is 2006-7 with 17-18, there is a slight increase in the area under wetlands in India. But the point is, I mean, if you see all the blues and the greens, light blues and the greens, it shows the increase between these two time periods. Most of these increase has because of the man-made systems, not the natural systems. So man-made systems means, I mean, if I talk about inland systems, it will be reservoirs, tanks, ponds. If I talk about coastal areas, it will be aquaculture, fish culture, pisciculture that is being followed. So most of these increase actually is driven because of the man-made ecosystems or the man-made wetlands rather than the natural wetlands. So this is also something which we should be cognizant of. Next slide, please. This is just to apprise the solution part as well. I mean, unfortunately, the slides could not be loaded initially, and I took a lot of time setting the context. But very quickly, and Dr. Rana, if you can give me 2-3 more minutes, I will try to summarize. So, first of all, we need to undertake risk-based assessments. You mentioned about, because of floods, people are having problem. There is a lot of water logging that has happened. Now, all these are risk zones. Are our interventions targeting these risk zones or not? And this is what this risk assessment can do. And it has 3 components: hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. Recently, we revised the state action plan on climate change for government of Maharashtra. And this is where we have actually undertaken this risk assessment approach to water resources. So if you look at this map on your right, the areas which are in red, they are the areas which are actually having high risk in terms of impact of water resources on communities and their welfare. So now government can take a call, what is that factor, which is driving risk in these areas, and they can actually prioritize their interventions. Next slide, please. Similarly, water accounting in this exercise is very, very, useful. So this is one of the water accounts that we prepared for Mahanadi River Basin in India. I love this basin because it looks like a fish. So I really, enjoy looking at this basin. Now, why we do water account, it will tell you what are the inflows, what are the outflows, where the water is utilized. Now, one of the examples I would like to highlight, because of the water accounting, we came to know that how much additional water summer paddy is taking. So if you look at the graph, first graph, extreme right, top one, the peach color which you see, this is the water or the irrigation requirement of summer paddy. And the blue and the green are the irrigation requirement for the paddy which is grown during monsoon or during Rabi season. So just see how much more water it needs as an irrigation requirement. So this is how the water account can actually provide a picture, and a corrective measure can be taken. I mean, so which basically means the summer paddy doesn't seem to be a suitable option, in this area. And, other crops like groundnut or maybe soya bean needs to be introduced, because they can also grow during the summer months, but taking much less water. Next slide, please. Similarly, we keep on talking about how much, water we can save. So we did one exercise where we estimated that about 20 to 47% of irrigation water can be saved actually by 2030 to 2050. And next slide, please. And once we are saving this water, this can be reallocated to manufacturing and domestic sector, because these are the sectors from where the future water demand will come. Irrigation demand is going to plateau from here onwards. We have already, created some 140, I think, million hectares of potential. About 100 million hectare is the gross irrigated area, as I understand. So we are already, kind of reaching that potential. Next slide, please. I was talking about treated wastewater reuse. So we also did some kind of economic and market potential study for the treated wastewater at the pan-India level. I'm not going to go in detail because of the paucity of time. What I will highlight is that if this water can be utilized for irrigating fields, of course we have to ensure that it doesn't have any emerging contaminants. The value it can generate from this alone is about 966 billion rupees in a year. This is revenue, not profit, right? And then it also has a potential to actually reduce the GHG emissions by 1.3 million tons. Why? Because most of these areas are dependent on groundwater for irrigation. And if we are providing treated wastewater, that groundwater pumping will reduce. So these are the two, broader kind of things I wanted to highlight. And if we are able to sell this water, we are going to earn about 630 million Indian rupees per day. So this is the potential, this is the rich potential which wastewater or treated wastewater has. Next slide, please, and probably this is the last one. Now, we have spoken a lot about quantity. We have also spoken a lot about risk assessment. Another facet is the quality. Now, many a times, in our country, the water quality assessments are done by different agencies. Pollution Control Board, their mandate is very different. They always do the monitoring at the outfall of a particular drain or a sewage carrying canal to the river. When CWC or states, they do such monitoring, their aim is to find a site which is less disturbed so that they can measure the river flow and the various parameters they can measure. So the objectives of water quality monitoring is very different. So what we can do with so much large amount of data that we generate, one simple thing that we did for one of the water body in Delhi, which is Bhalswa Lake. Unfortunately, this is shrinking each day. Is that we developed a water quality index, and this water quality index, it provides a specific value and tell you what is the status of the water body. For example, if the value of this water quality index is below 50, then the water quality is in bad or very bad stage. But if it breaches that 50, goes in towards 100, then the quality of that water body is good, is excellent. So it uses 9 water quality parameters which are listed there: DO, FC, pH, BOD, TDS, phosphates, temperature change, nitrates, and turbidity. So it can be done for different seasons, it can be done for annually, it can be done monthly, depending on the frequency of data that is being collected. Next slide, I think this is the last slide, and thank you so much for hearing me out and for the additional time, Chair. Thank you.